Change is hard, but it certainly is not impossible. In today's episode, we talk about how to change right after this. What is mindset? Our mindset is based on what we believe, and anything we believe in, we put into motion. I have spent my life putting the mindset of perseverance into motion, and now I am here today to share my journey along with others whose mindsets have changed the course of their lives. Hi, I'm mindset coach Lorraine Lindsey, and I believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. So are you ready? Welcome back to another episode of The Mindsetters, where we believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. I am your host, Coach Lorraine Lindsey, a certified peak performance and life coach. And I am super excited to talk about change because I feel that change is, first of all, inevitable, but it's not impossible to change. So before I get into this show and steps on how to change, do not forget to hit the subscription button, give us a thumbs up, send us your comments. We are continuing to grow because of your support. So I thank you, but do not forget to subscribe. Today, I have a very special guest. He happens to be the most special guest I will ever have because he is my son. And he's actually coming on the show for the second time. But I dragged him out here. He came to visit me from New York. And I'm like, you are coming on my show and we're going to talk about some change. Because I have seen so much change in him just from newborn to 25 years old. So anyways, without further ado, I'd like to welcome my handsome son, Devon Pearson.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming back and hanging out with your mama.
Of course.
So today we're talking about change. Whoa, what change gonna come? So I want to talk about change, first of all, because I feel like with your mama coaching all the time, everyone's always looking for something to change. Here's what I find out, though. Here's what I see with most people is that they're saying they want change, but it's really they want other people to change or they want circumstances to change. They're never really ready to do the work that it requires for change to happen in their life, which is self, right? Mm-hmm. So before we get into these little bullet points that I have, what do you think right off the gate about change and how important it is or how important it is to even be able to adapt to it?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is going to like what your reason for change is. I was listening to podcasts on the way here from like Rick Rubin, Andre 3000, and a lot of people talk about change and like being successful, but they don't realize that with that success, they're chasing it off of a void and not really just personal like wanting to do it or just having something within themselves that they're happy about. Change comes about not being happy in the moment sometimes. So get to be really attentional to why you want to change. And then once you change, focus on the process rather than like the outcome.
Oh, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you're right. I think people realize or pay attention to the need to want to change when something's happening in their lives that they're not happy with. And what they don't realize is that change is always happening anyway. Regardless of circumstances, just life just changes. Like the earth has its seasons. We have different seasons in our lives. So I put a little bullet point together. I was doing a little research here because you and I were kind of going back and forth on what we were going to talk about. But the first thing that when it comes to change is the acceptance, right? And like you alluded to is saying, okay, something has happened in my life that has compelled me to pay attention and to want to change. So when I use this word acceptance, like what's the first thing that comes to your mind about accepting that change has to happen?
Depends. So change can happen. Like the reason for you to want to change can happen for like a bunch of different reasons. So I don't know. Wait, so can you go back for like?
Yeah, like acceptance, right? Okay, and I'll give you an example of what I mean, what I think about acceptance. It's like, okay, I'm paying attention to something's happening in my life, right? Let's just say it's a crappy relationship. I'm in a terrible relationship. I'm not happy. I feel mistreated. This person is not fulfilling me for whatever reason. Or let's say it's a job or a career or something, a purpose in life. And you're just like, I'm miserable. I'm not feeling fulfilled. Something has to change. And when I say acceptance, it's like you first have to say, okay, I know there's a change and I have to accept that something has to happen in order for this change. Otherwise, you're going to stay stuck in it. So that's what I mean by acceptance, I guess. So what does that mean to you?
Well, acceptance means to me is first just acknowledging it. And then from there, whatever kind of making a course or a process to make that change happen. So and also setting expectations, because changes won't happen overnight. Depending on what the change is, if it's a very small change, then it can happen overnight. But if something that's big and that takes like a long time to do, you're gonna have to make a process to make that happen, and being okay with making incremental 1% changes, like one tiny changes to make that a big change happen over a course of time.
That's true. That's a good point, because I feel like a lot of people feel like, okay, I want to change, and they think that it's going to happen like the next day, and it's not that easy, right? It's not. You can't just say. I mean, you could just walk away from that relationship. You could just quit that job, but it's not really ever that easy, right? Because there's consequences to doing things with too much haste.
Yeah, and also too, just going into like back what I said originally, your intentions for wanting that change, really like focusing on inwardly to see if that change is because of that other external circumstance, or is it because of something that you have within you that you may need to fix, or not fix, or just kind of work on in order to make that change happen.
That's a good point.
There's two different ways that change can happen, is through external or internal. But most of the time, it has to be like internal work to make that change happen.
It's like almost like an external thing is happening, and then in order for the change, it's a reflection of you. And then in order for that change to actually take place, something has to happen on the inside too, right? Because sometimes things are changing because we're changing. Like everything around us is actually pretty much staying the same, but we've evolved and we've changed as a person. And so the way we're viewing things has shifted. I know for me, in some of my personal experiences with friendships, for example, when I'll give you a perfect example, right? I remember when I was working in a corporate environment, and I started off as an executive assistant, and I was working with other admin people, and we all like kind of talked the same talk and walked the same walk, and we all had the same little gossipy traits, and that was like the little tribe that we were in. Well, at one point I got promoted, and I actually left the company to go do a bigger job. And in that experience, my circle had changed, and the way people think and feel and act were different, and they were a different demographic of people. They had a different career path, et cetera. So at some point I was recruited to come back to the old company, right? I go back to the old company, and all of my friends who are still my friends are still in the admin executive assistant positions. And now I'm an executive, like a director kind of person. And I remember like going to lunch with them, for example, and the conversations that they were having, they were gossiping, they were being inappropriate. And I was like, God, I used to do that. I used to participate in this kind of conversation. And I had realized that I had changed, they had not. And it actually created some division in friendship because of it. Because now they're looking at me like, oh, you're high and mighty. And it's like, I'm not. I've matured. I've grown. Yeah. So, all right. So I want to go to the next thing on change. So first thing we said was acceptance. The second thing is to assess the mindset, which you already kind of alluded to. It's like you said, okay, I've accepted that things need to change because of whatever the circumstances are. Something is leading me to say, this is not working, right? Something has to change. And then the next thing is like being inward about it and saying, well, what do I think and feel about these situations? And what am I assessing in my mind that I need to do in order for these changes to happen? Because again, a lot of people, I feel like they really want other people to change or other circumstances to change.
Which is impossible.
But it's impossible. You don't have any power in that.
Or it's impossible at the same time, because everything, like going to like a scientific term, is an entropy. So everything is constantly...
Everything is what?
Is going to entropy. So entropy is like a science word. It's pretty much going to like everything's constantly going to constant disorder. Energy and matter and forces are always kind of going to a constant disorder.
Okay.
No matter what. So people, energy, just everything in general. So no matter what happens in life, everything is constantly changing. So since you can't control that's everything externally that's changing, the only thing you can kind of control is yourself and how you react to that, and then maneuvering around that. So,
which makes sense, which is, yeah, that's good. Man, you got good words, honey. That college is paying off. I was like, hold on, let me write that one down. Mama don't know that word. No, that's good. That's good. Hold on, I have to digest for a second. Okay. Yes. Yeah. But you're right though. And gosh, I wish to emphasize this actually, because I think that people get so caught up in wanting to control the narrative of life and wanting things to go certain ways. And because things change inevitably, it is an inevitable thing. we sometimes have a hard time understanding because change and adapting to change is very difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people will stay in the mundane and do the same routines for their lives because they're very uncomfortable with change, even if that scenario is miserable for them.
hmm I think also too, going into that, it's all based off of attachment too.
Mm-hmm.
Is not having. It might be kind of like a like a not a bad way, but like a sad way to look at it, but just not having too much attachment to everything, just with the knowledge that everything is changing. Once you have that and just really, like I said, focus on yourself, not in a selfish way, but just in a way that your control over yourself will kind of dissipate or kind of distance yourself from any result or anything that happens within change in the future,
Ooh.
which is bad or good.
Right.
Yeah.
Attachment.
And kind of riding the wave of life.
And so, it sounds, when you think about that, riding the wave, it sounds so liberating and free. But you're exactly right when you say that a lot of people are not adapting to change because they're very attached to things. Like we're creatures of habit, right? We get up and we have a routine, whether we're aware of it or not. There is this ritual that we adapt to. And when something catastrophic happens in our lives, a breakup, a divorce, a death, an accident, a loss of a job, all of a sudden that routine and that ritual gets interrupted. And so there's pattern interruptions in your mind, and then you start to feel awkward and uncomfortable, and your body starts to go into emotional turmoil because your pattern's been interrupted. And we're so attached to that without us knowing that a lot of us have a hard time coping with change.
Yeah.
Even though it's coming.
And I think it's even a little bit deeper than that. It's not even like trying to control, it's letting go of the control process itself.
Okay, elaborate. What do you mean?
So just the whole process of, and definitely externally, for sure externally, trying to control outcomes and setting expectations, because the more higher expectations you have and the outcomes do not like go up to those expectations, the more sad or the more in your feelings you'll be because of that expectation. So kind of like letting go of that control. And like I said, the attachment is on the control rather than the attachment being on the actual change itself. Yeah.
So that brings me to the next point, which is adjusting the mindset. And it's kind of alluding to what you're saying. It's like, okay, I've accepted that there needs to be a change. I'm assessing what I'm thinking about when it's to change. And now I need to adjust some things, right? And to your point exactly, it's like, okay, the change needs to happen. Why? It's asking yourself that question.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I guess the first question is, do I need to change?
Do you need to change?
This need to change, but do I need to change because I'm not happy with this, right? And if the answer is yes, then the next thing is, well, why? And I always say for people to layer it up. It's like 7 layers of bean dip or whatever that is. You got to get to the root. You got to get to the belly of it. And so it's like, okay, yes, I want to change. Why do I need to change? Well, because I'm not happy. Well, why are you not happy? Well, I'm not happy because of XYZ. Well, why is XYZ not making you happy? Well, because of this, and so on. And you keep asking the question until you get really in depth with why. Because again, it's so important because it's more about you and assessing it and feeling that something needs to happen, right? Than it is the circumstances outside. And I keep emphasizing that because a lot of people are stuck in circumstances that do not fit their lives because they're hoping that something outside will change. I see it a lot in relationships, and I'm guilty of it myself. Staying, even though it's toxic or detrimental. I'm not saying that word right. How do you say it? Detrimental. Yeah. Scratch that from the record. Bad for you. And it's like you stay stuck because you're like, banking on potential, banking on expectation, hoping that something will change. But it's like, no, I have to change because at some point I have to realize that this is a decision I made for my life. I've invited this person, or I've applied for that job, or I've stayed in this situation, or I'm around these negative people. And what needs to change is me removing myself from environment. Right.
I'll just add to that too. It's very dependent. Like radical accountability is very important, but at the same time too, life and people are just way more complex. So sometimes even hard to get yourself out of like stepping, like have a higher view to see that situation for what it is. Or it could be external and really just focusing on it. So having accountability is important, but it's not everything for every situation. So there's some situations where you can be stuck in that situation or stuck in that placement based off of like external reasons. It's not just you.
Give an example.
An example of that could be, that's hard. I don't know example on the spot. But maybe a relationship. If you're in a very toxic relationship, there's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of things that are going on within that. So you might not be in it, or you might be in the situation, but you might not be kind of aware of it being for you or the other person.
Right.
You might be stuck in that. So you have to take a higher level, like view above it.
Right. And the feeling and the knowing that something needs to change here is a step towards that. And this is where I say about the adjusting the mindset. It's like really, you got to be inward sometimes. You just got to listen like to what's being said. Like, well, I said I need to change. I know I feel things need to change. But again, going back to that why. And so that way it can give you a mindset of awareness.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things we're doing on autopilot, right? A lot of dysfunction and toxicity that we're in, or unhappy jobs or whatever, are kind of, they're patternistic, and some of them are pathology. It goes generational.
It's deeper, yeah.
You know, you're doing this job because your mama did this job, because your grandmother did this job, because your great grandmother did this job, and I was always taught that this is the way. And inside of me, I feel this desire, this burned desire to have a business, but everybody generationally has said, no, you got to, punch the paper, you got to clock in and clock out, and this is what you have to do. And so sometimes we know that things have to change, but we're worried about disappointing.
Yeah.
And, like there's people that I know that they're generationally in military, and they think I have to join the military because all of my, grandmother, grandfather, father, everybody's in there, and I feel obligated to do it, but I don't want to. I feel like something needs to change, like that dynamic needs to change. And sometimes that's difficult. It's a hard decision, but if you feel that it's in you to do it, then you have to take the step. So the next thing, you were going to say something, honey?
No.
And then this is kind of redundant here, but it's the next one was understanding why.
Yeah.
And again, we talked about that, but it's so important, right? Because you're compelling, to understand why is one thing. To be compelled by that why is when change moves.
Or accepting the why.
Yeah.
You might want to try to mitigate, or like trying to have a reason why that you intuitively know that's the reason, but make other excuses for the reason. So
meaning
really,
what? Like?
So you have a reason why that it might be your fault or not your fault, or like there's a reason that you would want the change that you just don't accept because of whatever reason, and making other like cognitive dissonance, like some other reasons.
You
rationalize why.
That's so true.
That change, and that could be completely throw you off your course of the reason why.
That is so true.
Affect your decision.
It's like when you know that you have to change or that things need to change, and you know it, right? So it's like, okay, this change has to happen, and I really know it has to change, but. And you understand the why, but then actually putting that into motion, it requires you to do things that sometimes you have to do that you're not ready to do. I'm going to circle back to a relationship as an example. You're in a bad relationship. It's toxic or abusive or just dead. It's just not a good relationship. There's no growth there, etc. And you know in your heart that this person is no good for you. People always know. They know.
Yeah.
But then to change would require you to remove yourself from that situation. In other words, to let that person go. And sometimes for our own reasons, we're not ready to do that. And that's where the why is important. Why am I not ready? Right? I understand these things, but why am I not ready? Is it because I don't want to be alone? Is it because I think this is as good as I'm ever going to get for my life? Is it because I don't believe I'm good enough? What are you telling yourself that you have deemed something that is unfulfilling for you acceptable? And this is where the why becomes important, because the why, when it becomes compelling enough for you, is when you shift and you make a move.
Exactly.
Yeah. You want to say anything else about that?
No, that was pretty good.
Well, thank you. You should come on the show more often. I'm very comfortable talking to you. I wonder why. So the next one is, after understanding why, is to now set small goals, right? And I purposely wrote the word small goals.
Yes.
Because there is this whole thing with setting goals in life.
I love small goals.
I love small goals too. And this is something that I'm recently learning and adapting myself to, because I was always a large goal setter. I would set a goal with this big vision in my mind of, like, Disneyland was built for me and I had no idea what I needed to build it with, And so now understanding how powerful small goals are because of the compounding effect. So why don't you explain that a little bit? Why do you love the small goals, and kind of explain how that works?
Yeah, I like the small goals. Going back to the original part of the conversation, small goals develops a process for you to enjoy. Because like I said, I've watched some interviews of Matthew McConaughey, like Andre 3000, Rick Rubin, and there's a lot of famous people. And their final destination, they were so caught up in that final destination that when they got there, they were still feeling a void that they were trying to chase, and it made that void even bigger when they got to that goal rather than help that void fill up. So in contrast to that, you have to really enjoy the process of getting to that goal. So an example of that right now, I'm practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So it's a grind. Every day you're getting your butt kicked, day in, day out. But each day, you don't know you're learning. You just keep getting your butt kicked until maybe months down the road, you can look back and you see the progression and the kind of stuff that you get from that. So that constant process of every day getting your butt kicked, but then slowly, incrementally enjoying the grind of getting to that end goal rather than just focusing on the end goal, you end up loving that process more than that end goal in general.
Because it's never...
And that's more fulfilling as well.
That makes sense, because it's not really... The misconception is that the goal is it.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, that's the prize. That's the gold star, right? And really, life is about the process, the journey.
Why.
Yeah. It's like... Because that's interesting what you said when you're... Because I know you listen to and you read a lot on this stuff, that people set these big goals, these lofty goals for their lives, and then they hit it. And it ends up creating a bigger hole, a bigger void to fill, because it's like, now what? All of this to get to this because of what I thought it was. Kind of goes back to what you said about expectations, because we attach expectations to our goals too.
Exactly.
Of saying, when I hit this, I'm going to be so much happier.
Exactly.
Right? Or if I make this much money, I'm going to be way happier in my life. And then you get it and you're like, why am I not happy? It's because you didn't enjoy the process.
Enjoy the process. And then the process, I think the reason why the process is so important, because the process is close to the present. So you have to be very comfortable and happy with the now. And it's a hard thing to do because you have to look yourself how you are right now and just accept the goods and the bads. And then going back to riding the wave of life. Like, life has its ups and downs. When it's down, riding that wave. When it's up, riding that wave, and continually going through that cycle and being okay with that cycle.
You're so wise, honey.
Get it from my mama.
I love it. No, because you even got your mom over here thinking, right? Yeah. No, but it's so true. And and this is why I love to talk about stuff like this, because people are very hard on themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
They really put a lot of pressure to be this level of greatness based on what exactly?
Oh, definitely today with like social media, and it's just so much projection of everyone doing well and everyone seeming okay, which is actually, I think, it's the complete opposite. Everyone's like, to an extent, not okay.
Right.
But it's because of constant comparison and not really paying attention to now, but really hyper-focused on the future and how they can get what they don't have.
Which is why there's higher levels of anxiety that we're seeing, people with depression. Because anxiety, I think there's an old Chinese proverb, or it's a Tao saying or whatever, but it's like anxiety comes from when you are stressed about the future, and depression is when you are very focused on what has happened in the past. And kind of like what you're saying, like you look at the Andre 3000 or big celebrities that are maybe going through depression because they're like, I worked this hard to hit this goal. I hit this goal. Now there's this bigger void. And they're reflecting back and saying, why didn't I do this? And why didn't I pay attention to this? And they get depressed and down. And then you've got that one person. The other side of that is, I gotta have this. I gotta have this. What if I don't get this? What if I never hit this goal? What if I'm not as good as that person? And they get so anxious and riled up because they feel like everything has to happen like now.
And also, think it's okay to feel that way and like want everything now, but just having the recognition of the why before that, that has a lot of value in itself. Once you kind of have that not awakening, but kind of just wake up, it's like, okay, this is the reason why I want all that, to fill all the voids I don't have from this area and this area. It's kind of freeing. It's like, okay, maybe I can just take it moment by moment and build on processes. It's getting 1% incrementally better on whatever that change is. And once you focus on that 1% better and being consistent, that's another thing.
Consistency.
You build a lot of confidence as more consistent you are at whatever thing that you're trying to change or build. And that builds fulfillment and happiness more on the day-to-day than that specific outcome long term.
That's so true. That's so true. Because even with the podcast, you've seen Mama from the beginning,
100%.
right?
Every week you're out here.
And I'm out here and just doing little things. And exactly that one small little thing. I remember when I had the vision for it and set out you know what's interesting though? Because I didn't make it a goal, actually. It was just a vision. And there was a difference.
There's a difference.
I had a vision for it, and then I just tried to figure out what can I do first. So the first thing I did was get my iPhone and a terrible microphone and set up shop in my kitchen with my girlfriends, right? And then that was the one little thing that I did. And then I did that a few times, and then, you know, somebody, Quan, from this studio, and I reference this a lot, but he happened to watch. And then that led to a conversation about you should come to a professional studio. And coming to this environment, then it was like one show, then the next show. The next thing you know, I'm posting little things. And before you know it, I'm growing an audience.
The whole process is beautiful.
The whole process is because there was no expectation.
Yeah.
I just did it because it felt good to do. It was something I wanted to do. It was going back to the change thing. Every little thing that I did, every step that I took told me what I needed to alter and change. So I embraced change because I knew every step that I took was going to give me something that I could tweak.
Yeah.
And so that was good for me too. But you're right about the consistency and setting those small little goals.
And they build upon each other too.
They
I think
do.
the main value from it is just it's okay to have a vision or a focus and an outcome. And it's said so much, and I'm still practicing it too because I still want the outcome and next best thing. And I'm like, okay, they say this, but I still feel like if I try it, I'll still feel better or whatever in the future. But it's really, really trying to focus on the process and just enjoying the hard grind and the beauty of the process itself rather than the outcome.
Yeah. So the last one then would be with that, when you set these small goals, to be okay to fail.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
This is one thing I used to tell you all the time. Fail as often as you possibly can because that measures the fact that you are trying and you're attempting. People are so afraid to fail, but the result of resisting failure and not wanting failure is to not do anything.
Do
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anybody who's failing is trying. That is period, point blank. What do you mean you failed? Well, I tried to start this business and it failed. So you tried something, you actually put something into motion, but what did you learn? The thing is, be okay to fail, but don't stay in the failure, right? It's like, okay, well, again, why did I fail? What do I need to change about this? And not beat yourself up so much about that. Because again, like you said, the low waves, the high tides and the low tides, it's about riding the wave. And sometimes your failure will be your greatest asset. Yeah. I have learned so much in my life because of my failures. But that is also because I have made it a point to surrendering
to the process.
That's
a whole different thing.
To allowing myself to be a student to my life. That is the position I'm in. I don't need to do this life thing like I've got it all together and that I know it all, even though I act like I do sometimes. Why are you laughing? You think I act like I know it all? Sometimes. That's up for, we can debate that one. He and I always have these healthy, crazy debates, so it's funny. But I love it. But being able to surrender to my life and to be a student, first of all, it gives me space to breathe because it tells me that I'm just learning everything, and I'm gonna try, and I'm gonna keep trying, I'm gonna keep trying, and those little things, going back to those little things, and so I think that's important. What do you have to say about the whole failure thing?
No, I think it's very important too. I also think it's put in perspective. There's a privilege as well to that because there's some people who probably in positions where they feel like they're at such a low point or they're failing, their life's been kind of failed or like they just don't have no hope that they feel like they've been riding like a low point for a very long time. So I think it's fair to say that like for those people or people who don't have the circumstance of going up and down, is really trying to fixate on whatever change that they want, is really focusing on going back to that 1% incremental change and just trying to put their foot out and being consistent. Because I think for me personally, the more consistent you are, and this has only worked for me, the more confidence I've built in me to continue that process. And then it takes a long time for you to see that growth. Then for you to look back, it's like, okay, this is kind of something that I enjoy because I'm seeing myself from where I was to where I am now, but not because of the outcome, just because of that small change every day making that process and making me change slowly but surely.
Yeah, and and I didn't put this on the slide, but speaking on that, touching
Mm-hmm.
on that, it's celebrating the small victories.
Yeah,
Because I think
exactly.
sometimes when we are, like you said, there are people, I think that's a really valid, and I'm so glad you said that point about some people are in a slump and a fail. Everything they're trying is failing.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that that wave is,
Never.
that low tide is just never coming up. And so that's where it's important to check in
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, what am I really focusing on?
Yeah.
Is the failures becoming so overwhelming for me that I'm just only focused on that? And what are the one little tweaks that I can do? And let me celebrate even that smallest little thing, and let me celebrate that victory.
Exactly.
And even like I was listening to something today, I think it was, or whenever, and they were talking about just doing small little goals. Like, let's say you're like, you know what, in order for me to do this thing, let's say I'm going to do something like weight loss. Let's say I have this goal to lose weight. And you're like, oh my gosh, I got to lose 30, 50 pounds or whatever it is, right? It's a big thing and it's overwhelming just thinking of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, okay, I know I need to maybe go to the gym, and I know I need to change my diet. Those are the two things I know. But this is the thing I don't want to do. And then it's like, okay, well, don't do it all.
Yeah.
Just do something small. Just drive to the gym. Don't even go inside.
Mm-hmm.
Just get in the car and drive. Maybe the baby step for you is to lay out gym clothes and just put them on.
Mm-hmm.
And just walk around with the gym clothes on
Exactly.
and decide if you're going to go to the gym that day.
And create that habit.
And
then build
make
on
that a habit, and then build on it.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with your diet. It's like, okay, I don't want chicken and broccoli. I don't even eat vegetables. Like, this is too much. Okay, what's the one little tweak you can do? Maybe make your breakfast a little bit lighter and then eat whatever you want at lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then progress from that, like you said, building up. And I think we forget sometimes that we can do little things, even for me with real estate, right? Getting into real estate and doing it full time. I'm like, I have to build this as a business, and I have these big ideas and all these things I have to do. And it's like, Lorraine, don't overwhelm yourself with 200 calls today. If it's hard for you to make a call, just start by dialing one number. You know what I mean? And then maybe tomorrow you'll try two, and just building yourself up, because before you know it, you gain momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll look back, like you said, and you'll be like, oh my goodness, I lost 10 pounds.
And I didn't even think about it. Yeah.
I didn't even think about it.
Just been showing up.
Right. I've just been doing those one little things, and then a little thing on that, and a little thing on that. And it's just slowly tweaking yourself so you can get into a ritual with those changes.
Exactly.
What do you want to say in conclusion about change to people out there who are really struggling with change? So they know that it's there. They know that they need to change. They have some very unhappy circumstances in their lives right now, whether it's, again, personal goals, relational goals, or with your work or purpose in life. What would you say to people out there about change?
Yeah, I would say change is inevitable. And I think my personal just advice for myself personally is just not beat myself up on the process of change, because change, like, regardless, it's going to happen. And focusing on, like I said, the small incremental things as I can, being as consistent as I can, and being okay if I slip up on that, and not beating myself up and being too hard on myself on that, because that's having self-love, and like knowing that slipping up and stuff is okay. I think is more important than anything.
And when you say self-love, what does that look like for you? What do you do that's a reflection of you saying, you know what, I'm loving myself? What are the things that you do?
For me personally, it's showing up to the things I commit to every day. Whether, like I said, it's doing it, because prior I used to kind of have a set goals, like go to the gym and work out every single workout. And if I didn't do that, I felt like I failed. But even like you said, just showing up to the gym and maybe just doing a run on the treadmill, or just doing something small. As long as I showed up, over time, just that aspect compounds over time.
And you felt like that was
I felt like it built confidence, and with that confidence, more fulfillment than me focusing on a specific outcome in general. Yeah.
Just showing up for self.
Just showing up for self.
Yeah. And whatever that is, right?
Whatever that is, yeah. It can be super small. It can be just very personal to yourself, like nobody else really has to know.
Right.
But as long as you keep at it, I think it's very important.
Right. For me, I said this earlier, but a lot of people won't change because they don't want to. And we have to be honest with that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I don't like things that are happening, but I don't want to change. And you have to be clear that if you recognize that change is there or that there's a need for change, you have to be clear that it's you that has to change.
There's a lot of value in that too. Yeah.
And there's a lot of value. You get your power with that
Mhm.
because you can say, you know what, I'm going to make different choices for my life and I'm going to change that. And it can be difficult. And it's okay to give yourself some grace and to trust the process, like you said. Because the bottom line is this. Either you decide to make the changes or things that are happening will change you.
100%. Yeah.
Right? That bad relationship, that person that's toxic or mistreating you, it will close your heart.
Mhm.
Over time, your heart will be closed. That deadbeat job where people are mistreating you or that boss is no good to you or you're never going to get a promotion, it's going to discourage you to the point where you'll never try anything, and that will change you. Right? So it's like we make the change or we're going to let things change us.
Mhm.
And that's the decision you have to
That's
make.
literally how it goes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, sweetheart, Mama loves you on this show.
love
We
you
could do
too.
like a mother-son podcast.
I know. I have a
Because you're
little.
so well-spoken and so
I
articulate.
appreciate you, Mama.
And you're deep, yo.
I know. I get it from my mama.
It's so funny because today he was like, I don't want to be thinking when we're on that podcast, Mom.
I know it got me thinking.
And then I got you over here thinking. I was like, that's impossible. That's all you do is think. You're
Yeah.
like so deep, and I love it. And I love you, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
I love you too.
Yeah, so thank you all so much for watching this episode. Remember, change is not impossible. It is inevitable. And you have the power to change your life. You really, really do. And it has to do with this shift in your mindset. So until next time, don't forget to subscribe, and we're out. Ciao.